All right. Let me pull up stuff. Okay. So this is involving, this is mainly because of various, like, things that people do that are various quirks of their writing that is important to talk about. I was actually, this kind of came up from a conversation with my husband the other day because I looked on Instagram and someone was like, you know, they never mention Katniss using the restroom in the Hunger Games. And I'm like, of course not. It's not important.
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that? But everyone's like, it's not realistic enough because of that. And I'm like, okay, we got to address why they don't talk about this.
Yeah, I don't think we need to know.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like, we don't need to know all this information. So we're going to talk about hygiene, bodily functions, things like that, and when you should mention them in a story, because there are sometimes you should, and when you should not mention them, like Hunger Games.
Hunger Games is like a super serious book. If they just had like, she went to the bathroom in the leaves.
I know, exactly. It's like, what?
You're like,
don't need this.
I need to know that.
But it's still something people complain about. So as a result, I was like, let's talk about this. Let's address this topic. It's going to be a short lesson, I promise. I won't torture you for long.
Thanks.
So when should you include it? You should include it if it's unusual. So, for example, if they're going on a date, you might want to mention they made sure to put on extra cologne or something like that, and made sure to shower and things like that.
Yeah, so that's what I would usually do. Those are things you wouldn't
mention, but if they're going on a date, of course you're going to mention it, because then it shows that they want to impress this person.
They're like, I like you.
Exactly. It shows they're putting effort into their hygiene in order to do this. You also want to do it if it is unusually habitual. So, for example... yes. So, for example, if they do it a ton, for example, if they are OCD about germs and they wash their hands like every 20 minutes, not many people do that. So, as a result, you probably want to mention that if that's the case.
There was one day where I washed my hands 7 times.
Yes, and I'm assuming there was a reason for that.
There was. I just kept like touching things, and I was like, no.
You're like gross thing. Exactly. That's also a thing you want to mention. If it is, like I said, unusual, then you want to mention it. If, for instance, they're mucking out the stables and they're like, ew, this is really gross, then they will probably go wash their hands. You probably want to mention that before they have like a romantic encounter. That way they're not being like, hey, I'm covered in grossness. We're gonna kiss. No, you want to mention that they cleaned up beforehand.
No.
That's
Brush
important.
Brush your teeth first.
Exactly. You also want to mention it if it is plot important. Now that might sound weird, but it can be plot important. For example, if they are poisoned.
I have a really good example from this show.
So
this guy, he's a chameleon. Don't judge, okay?
Okay.
He's a chameleon, and he can turn invisible, obviously, but like actually invisible. But they're going on a mission and against these people who have really good smell. So he's like. He smokes a lot, so he's like, I can't smoke. I can't do it.
Okay.
I can't do it. And then he's like, he puts on like unscented deodorant and stuff, and he's like, okay, now I'm ready. Now we can go and defeat these big bad guys.
But see, there you go. If it's plot important, where, for example, there's that, or if they get poisoned, and so the person's like, oh, I'm not feeling so good, and they go, bleh, then that's important because they're poisoned, and then someone can be like, my gosh, why are you sick and the rest of us aren't? Maybe you're poisoned. That's important.
Wait, that's in my story. I'm gonna have somebody.
And so it's important to know these kinds of things. Or like, recently I was watching a crime drama, and they identified who the criminal was because they had stolen some radioactive stuff, and they were showing symptoms of radioactive poison.
What?
And so even though it was gross to see, it was also made sense that they were like, this is how we're going to identify them, is by all these gross symptoms. So you need to mention those things if they are important. I don't think they did that, but but so when should you not include these things? Like
any other time.
Yes, exactly. Any other time. If it's not plot important, if the habit is normal for them. For instance, you don't need to mention every single time your character goes and takes a shower. Even if they shower every morning, we don't care. We don't care. It's not necessary. Exactly. Right. It's not adding to the story. It's just making us go, why? In that, but some people do that. So it's important to know what their habits are too with things like even hygiene in a mirror. Is their hair super frizzy and crazy and barely brushed, or do they spend hours in front of the mirror being like, let's make sure my hair's perfect?
That's not me.
That was my
I
cousin.
put my hair in a bun today because I didn't want to do that.
See, I don't blame you. That's definitely me. I took a shower and then came here. Didn't bother to brush my hair.
I didn't take a shower.
But like, as far as that kind of stuff goes, though, these things will give attributes to your character that are interesting. This is part of the reason, though, why people think it's cliche when you do a mirror scene, because most people don't stare in the mirror and go, oh, I have luscious green eyes. Most people don't do that. Unless they're a narcissist, in which case feel free to add that.
Oh! Sorry, there's a character, and his father is so bad. I hate him.
But yes, see, that's my point, though, is if you mention things like that and it's important, then make sure to mention things
he's
like that.
My father spends exactly 15 hours, no, like 50 minutes in front of the mirror every day, combing every piece of his hair.
Right, and it's like, okay. Interesting.
Oh, my back can't take this anymore. I have perfect posture. Look at me. Wow.
I feel that. Anyway, there are also other things that you can mention. Like, for example, you may have seen this in some sort of supernatural movies, but you know, where they're going camping in the wilderness, and the one guy's like, I gotta go pee, and he runs off and then gets eaten by a monster.
Yeah, that one.
In that case, it is actually super valuable that you mention they gotta go pee, because otherwise, why are they running off into the woods in the middle of the night?
They're like, see you suckers. I actually hate you.
Exactly. It's like, okay, that's random. So, like, yes, it can seem gratuitous or strange to mention these kinds of things, but it's actually important if it's important to the plot. Things you also can mention are conditions, such as if there are symptoms of a plague. For example, in Cinder.
No. I haven't read Cinder, so I'm just saying no.
But yes, her sister gets sick, and so as a result, it's mentioning things like that because she's watching her sister be sick. And so even though it may seem gross, it's important because to her there are different stages to the virus, and the more symptoms you show, the more close you are to death. And so as a result, she's watching all of these symptoms and trying to track how close her sister is to dying, possibly. And so that makes it important for you to mention as part of the plot. It's also important to mention things like murder. Well, I realized as I was doing this lesson, I was like, there are a lot of these types of things that are relevant to murder mysteries. So, as a result, first thing we're going to talk about is it a cozy mystery? Now, the definition of a cozy mystery, are you just going to write it up here?
Great, because I'm like writing. I keep writing new genres when I enter writing contests, and I don't mean to. I'm like, stop.
This is why it's good
Let
to
me
know.
write the genre I usually write.
Cozy mystery is when there is a murder, but you don't really describe the murderer. Like
I'm
you
not
say,
gonna describe
so
the
and so
murderer.
got poisoned, and then you don't even like show the body or anything.
I'm not going to show the body. Who am I?
But if you're a like thriller writer, then you probably want to show the body and be like covered in maggots and blood.
Oh.
You know, like
good.
I realize
I was
it's
gonna
gross,
say-
but it's also if you're writing a thriller, that's actually part of the genre. It's considered normal and
so
important. So it's important to do your research with those kinds of things. And how much does it matter to the characters how they dress and how they look too with those types of things when they are murdered?
Arsene Lupin, he has the most amazing top hat, and he's always so gentlemanly. And then he gets tied up by this other thief.
Well, dang.
And then he's like, well, dang. I was just on
I
the
would
train
agree.
minding my own business, about to go rob some people.
All right, then. But yes, point being, though, that the condition of the body can tell us a lot about the person. For example, if they have a fake passport on them, or if they recently cleaned their nails, that is going to tell us more information than if they haven't.
Not me. You
Well,
don't.
some people do before like a date, or if they are really wealthy, they might make sure their nails are very well clean. Whereas if they're a gardener or a botanist, they might not care. And so as a result, that is also going to tell you a lot about the character and a lot about the type of person they are. It can also tell us things about the conditions like weather. Is the person shivering? Is the person sweating? Even though it seems gross, these are important to mention. If you're in the middle of the Sahara Desert, they are probably going to be sweating.
Yeah.
And if you don't mention that, the breeders are going to be like, why is he super powered?
Yeah. Can
Yes.
I mention something? Now that I'm thinking.
Yeah.
For people like me that writes both with main characters, animals, and
Yes,
stuff.
as animals, like the Warrior
yeah,
series, etc.
Yeah. If somebody's going to go really deep into
Mhm.
the animal behavior and stuff,
Yeah.
they're going to have to use some pretty gross stuff because
They are,
because,
unfortunately.
yeah,
Because animals
cats-
do some pretty
I mean,
gross things.
Yeah.
I mean,
To show some useful stuff. For example, tigers they urinate some rocks and
no, it's true.
trees.
It's just
mark
part of
territory.
what they
Rocks. My last name means that I live by a giant rock, by the way.
But yes, there are things like
Yeah,
that where
that-
it's like it's important to mention,
Yeah.
or like in the Warrior series, they'll mention their marking their territory and things like that, and it's
Yes.
like that's an important part of a cat's life.
Mhm.
Obviously, for a person, we're probably not going to mention that unless we're psychotic.
I'm marking my territory.
But like,
Oh my
but
goodness.
cats definitely do that, and that's definitely a part of their behavior,
Yeah.
and it's important to mention things like that. Or like in the Guardians of Gahul that you mentioned you were reading, where they yarp up pellets.
yeah,
It seems gross, but at the same time, it's just a part of owl life.
They do
It's
poop
part
out
of
pellets. We
functioning.
dissected a pellet inside of us.
Oh, that sounds
Exactly. So as the author, she chose to mention that because of the fact that they saw it as being a sign of being superior to other birds. And so I thought it was plot relevant. It was interesting. It gave us more to the story and to the owl characters.
The owl stopped pooping out pellets made you a superior bird?
Yeah, because they were like, we don't poop and it's not all gross and wet.
Oh,
we
yeah,
we
yeah,
barf it up in
yeah.
a little nice bundle, and it's
Uh-huh.
like,
I forgot they
okay,
barf
that's
it
a
up.
weird thing to be superior about.
They're
Like, it was part of the
Because it's not
development.
the
Hair
flattery.
Exactly. They thought they were so cool.
They are
But
so
anyway.
cool. What are you talking about? They're superior in every way.
But that being said, those kinds of things are all important to mention if it is plot relevant. If it's not plot relevant, then we don't need to mention it, and that's okay.
It is very.
Do we have any questions? Probably not, I'm guessing, but feel free.
I had a question, but I forgot it. It wasn't about that, though. It
That's
was
okay.
about something
It can
else.
be unrelated. If you have an unrelated writing question, feel free to ask. Unrelated writing question. Hello.
Who art thou?
I have hiccups.
It's you.
Hello.
You give me a fist bump. Yeah. Do it. Oh, I hate
Oh, all right.
you. Wrist knuckles. You wrist bumped me?
It was an interesting choice of a fist bump.
I wrist knuckled you. Why?
All right.
Because
No other
Okay.
questions about writing before I turn the video off?
I forgot.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's not okay. I forgot.
If you think of it later, that's okay. So I just want to reiterate, because this is a recording.
You're welcome.
Um,
You weren't here for the first half of it. It was very interesting.
It was very interesting. But that being said, please make sure to turn in your contest entries by the 31st. And as far as that goes, I am going to reiterate the prizes for the end of the year have gotten cooler.
Let's go.
So for the prizes for this, it's probably going to be something like a notebook or a book because that's what I have. But if
You should get Artemis Fowl for the book.
that would be cool.
Yes.
As far as those kinds of things go, that's what I have right now. But for the grand prize at the end of the year, I have a $50 gift card for the best story of the year.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
So, and that's for both age categories. Then I will have a runner-up in both age categories that will get a $25 gift card.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you enter, even if you don't win anything, you automatically get entered into the raffle for the $15 gift card. Granted, you have to actually be there to receive it, so please make sure you put it in your calendars. I'm going to be sending out emails with that today. But yes, so I'm going to turn the video off now.